The Reflection of the Universe. A Sci-Fi Story. Part 1. The first time Dr. Mara Ellingsen saw her reflection blink on its own, she was standing in the observation deck of Station Kallistrate, staring at the impossible shape blooming in the void. The mirrored galaxy, the one the press had nicknamed the Echo, filled the viewport like a bruise on reality. A perfect copy of the Milky Way, down to the spiral arm distortions, the dust lanes, the faint radio emissions. It had no right to be there. It had no right to move. And yet it was approaching, closing the intergalactic gulf at a speed that violated every known law of physics. Mara leaned closer to the glass. Her reflection leaned closer too. Then it smiled. She did not. A cold pressure crawled up her spine. She stepped back. Her reflection did not. It stayed close to the glass, its breath fogging the surface in a slow, deliberate exhale. "Mara?" a voice said behind her. "You're pale." She turned. Dr. Soren Halvik stood in the doorway, holding a tablet full of spectral data. His eyes were sunken from too many sleepless nights, his hair tied back in a haphazard knot. He looked like everyone on the station did these days. Exhausted, brittle, stretched thin by the weight of what they were witnessing. "I'm fine," Mara lied. Soren followed her gaze to the viewport. "It's closer again." "It shouldn't be," she said. "But it is." He nodded grimly. "We ran the parallax measurements 3 times. The Echo is accelerating. And the gravitational readings," he hesitated, "they're starting to match ours." Mara's stomach tightened. "Match? As in, identical." She looked back at the glass. Her reflection was normal again, perfectly synchronized, perfectly hers. But she had seen it. She knew she had. Soren stepped beside her. "We need you in the lab. The new data from the neutrino array." He stopped, because the reflection behind the two of them didn't match. Mara's reflection was staring directly at her, eyes wide, pupils dilated. Soren's reflection, however, was turned toward Mara's reflection, as if listening to it. Soren inhaled sharply. "Mara?" The reflections snapped back into alignment. Mara forced her voice steady. "We need to record this. We need to evacuate," Soren whispered. "We can't. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because whatever is happening, it's accelerating. And if we leave without understanding it, Earth won't stand a chance." Soren swallowed hard. "Then let's move." They left the observation deck together, neither daring to look back at the glass. The collapse begins. The corridors of Station Kallistrate hummed with the low, constant vibration of overworked systems. The station had been built for deep space astrophysics, not existential crisis management. Every lab was full. Every console was running hot. Every scientist was one sleepless night away from breaking. As Mara and Soren entered the central lab, a dozen heads turned toward them. Dr. Yara Singh, the station's chief cosmologist, strode forward. "Tell me you have something." Mara shook her head. "Only more anomalies." Yara cursed under her breath. "The Echo's mass signature is now within 0.0003% of the Milky Way's. That shouldn't be possible. Even a perfect mirror universe would have quantum divergence." "It's not a mirror universe," Mara said quietly. "It's a mirror of ours." Yara frowned. "Explain." Mara pulled up the latest neutrino data. "The background neutrino flux from the Echo is identical to ours. Not similar. Identical. Down to the noise patterns. That means it's not a separate universe," Yara finished. "It's the same universe." Repeated. Soren rubbed his temples. "A recursion. A reflection," Mara said. "A cosmic reflection." Yara stared at the data. "But reflections don't move independently." "They do," Mara said. "If the mirror is falling." The room went silent. Soren broke it. "We also saw something else." Yara raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" Mara hesitated. "Reflections behaving independently." A murmur rippled through the room. Yara exhaled slowly. "You're not the first to report that." Mara's pulse quickened. "Who else?" "Half the station," Yara said. People are seeing alternate versions of themselves in reflective surfaces. Some subtle. Some not. Soren's voice dropped. Not. Yara tapped her tablet. A video appeared, grainy, recorded from a bathroom mirror. A technician stood brushing her teeth. Her reflection, however, was staring directly at the camera, eyes wide, mouth unmoving. Then the reflection lifted its hand and pressed it against the glass. The real technician dropped her toothbrush and stumbled back. The reflection smiled. The video cut out. Mara felt her skin crawl. When was this recorded? 3 hours ago, Yara said. And it's getting worse. Soren looked around the room. What do we do? Yara's expression hardened. We figure out what the echo wants. Mara shook her head. It doesn't want anything. Then what is it doing? Mara looked at the data, at the impossible symmetry, at the collapsing distance between two identical galaxies. It's merging, she said. The echo is collapsing into our universe. And when it reaches us, there won't be two versions of anything anymore. Soren swallowed. Only one. Yara nodded grimly. And the reflections? Mara met her gaze. They're choosing. The first breach. The alarm klaxons began at 3:17 station time. A piercing, metallic wail that vibrated through the walls and into the bones. Mara jerked awake at her desk, knocking over a stack of printouts. She blinked blearily at the flashing red lights. Breach detected. Sector C. Her heart seized. Sector C housed the quantum optics lab, the one with the largest reflective surfaces on the station. She sprinted into the corridor, nearly colliding with Soren, who was already running. You saw it? He gasped. Yes. They reached Sector C just as the emergency doors slammed shut. Through the small reinforced window, Mara saw chaos, overturned equipment, shattered glass, flickering lights, and a figure, a woman, standing perfectly still in the center of the room. Mara's breath caught. It was her. Not a reflection. Not a distortion. Her. Same face. Same hair. Same scar on the left eyebrow from a childhood fall. But the eyes were wrong. Too calm. Too knowing. Mara, Soren whispered. That's... I know. The other Mara tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she smiled. The same smile Mara had seen in the observation deck reflection. A cold, deliberate smile. The lights flickered. When they came back on, the other Mara was gone. The room was empty. The emergency doors unlocked with a hiss. Soren grabbed Mara's arm. Don't go in there. We need to know what happened. We need to stay alive. She stepped inside. The air was cold. Too cold. Frost clung to the edges of the shattered glass. The reflective surfaces, the mirrors, the polished metal panels, were cracked, warped, distorted as if something had pushed through them. Mara knelt beside a broken console. Embedded in the metal was a handprint. Her handprint, but reversed, as if pressed from the inside of a mirror. Soren stood in the doorway, trembling. This is impossible. Mara touched the reversed handprint. It was ice cold. No, she said softly. It's happening. The identity problem. By 6 o'clock, the station was in controlled panic. People avoided mirrors, avoided windows, avoided anything with a reflective surface. Some covered their faces. Some refused to speak. Some claimed their reflections whispered to them when no one else was around. Mara gathered the senior staff in the briefing room. Yara looked like she hadn't slept in days. Soren looked worse. Mara began without preamble. The echo is not just approaching. It's synchronizing. She pulled up a hologram of the two galaxies, the Milky Way and its perfect twin, spiraling toward each other. Their quantum states are converging. Their histories are aligning. Their identities are collapsing into a single solution. Yara frowned. A single solution? A single universe, Mara said. One timeline. One set of particles. One version of every person. Soren's voice was barely audible. And the others? Mara hesitated. They're being overwritten. Yara leaned forward. You're saying the reflections are… what? Competitors? Candidates, Mara said. The universe is selecting which version of each person will persist after the merge. Soren shook his head. That's insane. So is a galaxy moving faster than light, Mara said. So is a reflection acting independently. So is a reversed handprint in solid metal. Yara exhaled slowly. How long do we have? Mara pulled up the latest trajectory data. The room fell silent. 3 days, she said. Maybe less. Soren slumped back in his chair. We're dead. No, Mara said. Not if we understand the selection mechanism. Yara raised an eyebrow. You think it's deterministic? I think it's based on identity coherence, Mara said. Whichever version of a person is more stable, more defined, more real. Soren stared at her. How do you measure that? Mara looked at her own trembling hands. I don't know. The second Mara. She found her again that night. Not in a lab. Not in a corridor. In her quarters. Mara entered her room and froze. Her reflection in the window was already there, standing perfectly still, staring out at the echo. But the real Mara was standing several steps away. The reflection turned. Slowly, deliberately, and stepped out of the glass. Mara stumbled back, hitting the wall. The other Mara stood before her, identical in every detail except for the eyes. Deeper, darker, filled with something ancient and patient. Why? Mara whispered. The other Mara tilted her head. Because only one of us can remain. Her voice was the same. Exactly the same. Mara's pulse hammered. What are you? A possibility, the other Mara said. A version of you that diverged long ago. A version that survived the recursion. Mara swallowed. Why me? Why now? Because the universe is collapsing into itself, the other Mara said. And when it finishes, there will be no room for duplicates. Mara's voice cracked. Are you here to kill me? The other Mara smiled faintly. No, I'm here to see if you deserve to live. Mara's blood ran cold. And if I don't? Then I take your place. The lights flickered. The other Mara stepped back toward the window. You have 3 days, she said. Prove you are the one who should remain. Then she dissolved into the glass like smoke. Mara collapsed to the floor, shaking. The theory of recursion. The next morning, Mara gathered the team again. She didn't tell them everything. Not yet. But she told them enough. The reflections are not hallucinations, she said. They are alternate versions of us. Versions from the echo. Yara rubbed her forehead. How are they crossing over? Through reflective surfaces, Mara said. Mirrors, glass, polished metal. Anything that can act as a boundary between two identical quantum states. Soren frowned. Why reflections? Because reflections are the simplest form of recursion, Mara said. A reflection is a copy of a copy of a copy. A self-similar structure. A fractal. The echo is a cosmic scale reflection. And as it approaches, the boundary between the two universes weakens. Yara leaned forward. What do they want? To survive, Mara said. Just like us. Soren's voice trembled. So we're competing with ourselves. Mara nodded. Yes. Yara exhaled. Then we need to understand the selection criteria. Mara hesitated. I think it's based on identity. Soren frowned. Identity. Coherence, Mara said. Consistency. Strength of self. The version of a person with the more stable identity will survive the merge. Yara stared at her. And how do we measure that? Mara looked at her hands. I don't know. The first disappearance. It happened during breakfast. A technician named Lien Zhou sat at a table, staring blankly into her coffee. She hadn't slept. None of them had. Across from her, her reflection in the metal surface of the table blinked. Lien did not. The reflection smiled. Lien's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to scream, and vanished. Instantly. Silently. Her reflection remained for a moment longer, smiling. Then it faded. The room erupted into chaos. Mara arrived minutes later, heart-pounding. Soren met her at the door. "She's gone." Mara swallowed. The reflection replaced her. Yara joined them, pale. "We need to lock down every reflective surface on the station." "It won't matter," Mara said. "The boundary is everywhere now. Even shadows can reflect." Soren's voice cracked. "Then what do we do?" Mara looked at the empty chair where Lien had sat. "We find a way to anchor ourselves," she said. "To prove we are the versions that should remain." Yara frowned. "How?" Mara took a deep breath. "We define who we are." The Identity Protocol. By noon, the station was running a new program, the Identity Protocol. Every crew member was required to record a detailed psychological profile, a memory log, a personal history, a statement of self. Anything that could anchor their identity in the collapsing universe. Mara sat alone in the recording booth. The camera blinked red. "State your name," the system prompted. "Mara Ellingsen." "State your origin." "I was born in London. I studied astrophysics at NTNU. I joined the Interstellar Research Initiative at 27. "State your purpose." Mara hesitated. What was her purpose? To understand the universe? To protect humanity? To survive? She closed her eyes. "My purpose," she said softly, "is to remain myself." The system beeped. Identity profile recorded. Mara exhaled shakily. But as she left the booth, she saw her reflection in the glass door. It smiled. She did not. The Echo speaks. At 1842, the station received a transmission. Not from Earth. Not from any known source. From the Echo. A voice filled the comms room. Distorted, layered, overlapping with itself. A voice that sounded like every person on the station speaking at once. A voice that said, "The merge is inevitable." The lights flickered. The voice continued. "Only one version of each identity will remain." Mara felt her blood turn to ice. The voice shifted, becoming clearer, becoming familiar, becoming hers. "Mara Ellingsen," it said. "Choose who you are." The transmission ended. Silence fell. Soren turned to her, trembling. "What does that mean?" Mara stared at the darkened screen. "It means," she whispered, "that my other self is coming." Part 2. The station lights dimmed to emergency levels as the last echoes of the transmission faded. No one spoke. No one breathed. The air itself seemed to recoil from the voice that had spoken through the comms. A voice that was not one voice, but all voices, layered into a single impossible chorus. Mara stood frozen, staring at the blank screen. Soren touched her arm. "Mara, what does it want from you?" She swallowed. "It wants me to choose who I am." Yara stepped forward. "Then we need to help you do that." Mara shook her head. "This isn't about psychology. It's physics, cosmology, identity as a quantum state." Soren frowned. "Identity isn't physics. It is now." The mirror room. The station's largest reflective surface was in the quantum optics lab, a polished 2-meter-wide parabolic mirror used for gravitational lensing experiments. It had been sealed off since the first breach, but now Mara requested access. Yara protested. "You're walking into a trap." "I need to understand her," Mara said. "I need to understand myself." Soren stepped in front of her. "You don't have to do this alone." Mara met his eyes. "Yes, I do." They entered the lab together anyway. The mirror stood at the far end of the room, draped in a heavy blackout sheet. Frost still clung to the floor from the earlier breach. The air felt thin, brittle, as if reality itself were stretched too tight. Mara approached the mirror. Her reflection approached too. She reached for the sheet. Soren grabbed her wrist. "Mara, I have to." She pulled the sheet away. The mirror gleamed. Her reflection stared back. Then it stepped forward. Not out of the mirror. Not yet, but closer, as if pressing against the boundary of the glass. Mara stepped closer too. Their faces were inches apart. The other Mara smiled. "You're weakening?" The reflection whispered, though its lips did not move. "You're fracturing. You don't know who you are." Mara's breath trembled. "I know enough." "Do you?" the reflection asked. "Or are you just pretending? You've spent your life studying the universe, but you've never studied yourself." Mara clenched her fists. "I know who I am." The reflection tilted its head. "Then prove it." The mirror rippled, and the reflection stepped out. The confrontation. The other Mara stood before her, identical in every detail. Same posture, same breathing, same heartbeat, but her presence was wrong. Heavier, sharper, like a blade honed to a perfect edge. Soren stumbled back. "Mara!" The other Mara ignored him. "You're incomplete," she said. "You're uncertain. You're afraid." Mara forced herself to stand tall. "Fear doesn't make me weak. It makes you unstable," the other Mara said. "And instability will be erased." Mara took a step forward. "Why are you doing this?" "Because the universe demands coherence," the other Mara said. "Two versions cannot exist. Only one identity can survive the merge." Soren moved between them. "There has to be another way." The other Mara's eyes flicked to him. "There isn't." She raised her hand. The mirror behind her rippled like water. Soren grabbed Mara's arm. "We need to go." "No," Mara said. "I need to understand." The other Mara smiled. "Good. Understanding is the first step toward acceptance." "Acceptance of what?" Mara asked. "Your end." The mirror surged. Mara and Soren ran. The fracture line. They sealed the lab behind them, but the mirror continued to pulse, sending waves of distortion through the corridor walls. The station groaned under the strain. Yara met them halfway down the hall. "What happened?" "She came through," Soren said. "The other Mara." Yara's face went pale. "Where is she now?" Mara shook her head. "Still in the lab. For now." Yara pulled up a hologram. "You need to see this." The hologram showed the Echo, the mirrored galaxy, now so close it filled half the sky. The two galaxies were overlapping, their spiral arms interlacing like fingers. "The merge has begun," Yara said. "We're inside the recursion zone." Soren stared at the hologram. "What does that mean?" "It means the boundary between the universes is collapsing," Mara said. "And the selection process is accelerating." Yara nodded. "People are disappearing across the station. Reflections are replacing them faster than we can track." Soren turned to Mara. "We need a plan." Mara exhaled. "We need to anchor ourselves. Not just psychologically, physically, quantum physically." Yara frowned. "How?" Mara looked at the hologram of the merging galaxies. "By breaking the symmetry." The asymmetry hypothesis. They gathered in the central lab, the air thick with tension. Mara stood at the center of the room, surrounded by equations, holograms, and terrified faces. "The Echo is a perfect mirror," she said. "A perfect copy. That's why it's collapsing into us, because identical systems cannot remain separate. They must resolve into a single state." Soren nodded. "So we need to make ourselves not identical." "Exactly," Mara said. "We need to introduce asymmetry. Imperfection. Something that breaks the recursion." Yara crossed her arms. "What kind of asymmetry?" Mara hesitated. "Identity." Soren frowned. "Identity isn't physical." "It is now," Mara said. "The merge is selecting based on identity coherence. So we need to make our identities distinct from our Echo counterparts." Yara raised an eyebrow. "How do we do that?" Mara took a deep breath. "By choosing who we are." The choice. The station's AI compiled the identity protocol data, memory logs, psychological profiles, personal histories, into a single quantum-encoded signature for each crew member. A unique identity waveform. A self. Mara stood before the quantum encoder, her hands trembling. Soren placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. She nodded. The encoder activated. A beam of coherent light scanned her, reading her identity at the deepest possible level. Memories, emotions, contradictions, flaws, hopes, fears, everything. When it finished, the AI spoke. Identity signature recorded. Mara exhaled. But then the lights flickered, and the other Mara stepped into the room. The final confrontation. The other Mara looked at the encoder, then at Mara. So this is your plan, she said. To define yourself. Mara stood her ground. Yes. The other Mara smiled. Then let's see which of us is more real. She stepped forward. The room warped around her. Reflections bending, shadows twisting, surfaces rippling like liquid. The echo was bleeding through her, using her as a conduit. Soren grabbed a metal rod. Stay back. The other Mara didn't even look at him. The rod bent in his hands, twisting like soft clay. Mara, she said, you cannot win. I am the version of you that survived. The version that endured. The version that became complete. Mara shook her head. You're not complete. You're hollow. The other Mara's smile faded. You're a reflection, Mara said. A copy of a copy. You exist only because I do. The other Mara's eyes darkened. Then I will erase you. She lunged. Mara dodged, barely. The air where the other Mara's hand passed shimmered, leaving a trail of fractured light. Soren shouted, Mara, the encoder! Mara turned toward the machine. The other Mara tackled her. They crashed to the floor, identical faces inches apart. You're weak, the other Mara hissed. You're uncertain. You're afraid. Mara stared into her own eyes. Yes, she whispered. I am. The other Mara froze. Mara continued. I'm afraid. I'm flawed. I'm inconsistent. I'm human. And that's what makes me real. The other Mara's expression twisted. No, she said. No, no, no. Mara reached for the encoder. The other Mara grabbed her wrist. Their hands touched the machine at the same time. The encoder activated. The merge. Light exploded. Not bright. Deep. A darkness so dense it became luminous. A recursion of selves, infinite and collapsing, spiraling into a single point. Mara saw everything. Her life. Her reflection's life. Every divergence. Every choice. Every possibility. Two identities intertwined, fighting for coherence. The universe whispered, only one. Mara felt herself slipping. The other Mara surged forward, her identity sharper, more defined, more certain. But Mara held on. Not with strength. With acceptance. I am flawed, she whispered into the void. And that is my asymmetry. The recursion shuddered. The other Mara screamed, a sound like shattering glass. And then, silence. Aftermath. Mara awoke on the floor of the lab. Soren knelt beside her, tears in his eyes. Mara? Is it you? She nodded weakly. It's me. Yara rushed in. The reflections are gone. All of them. The disappearances stopped. The echo. She pointed to the viewport. The mirrored galaxy was fading, dissolving into starlight, its structure unraveling like smoke in a breeze. It's collapsing, Yara said. The merge resolved. Our universe. One. Mara sat up slowly. No, not one. Stabilized. Soren helped her to her feet. What happened in there? Mara looked at the encoder. At the moment of merge, the universe chose the version of me that was most distinct. Most asymmetrical. Most human. Yara frowned. Why? Because perfection is unstable, Mara said. Symmetry collapses, but imperfection endures. They stood together, watching the echo fade into nothing. The last reflection. Later, alone in her quarters, Mara approached the window. Her reflection stared back, perfectly synchronized, perfectly hers. She touched the glass. The reflection touched it too. No delay, no distortion, No independent movement. Just her. Mara exhaled. "Goodbye," she whispered. Her reflection mouthed the same word. And for the first time since the echo appeared, Mara felt whole. Epilogue 3 months later. Earth received the full report from Station Kallistrate. Most of it was classified. Some of it was dismissed as impossible. But one conclusion remained. Identity is the anchor of reality. Mara returned to London, where the night sky looked different now, emptier, somehow, without the looming presence of the echo, but also clearer. She walked along the river, watching the water ripple in the moonlight. Her reflection shimmered on the surface. She smiled. It smiled too, perfectly. And Mara knew, truly knew, that she was the one who remained, the one who chose to be real. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Reflection of the Universe. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.